What's up, guys? My name is Saib and welcome to another episode. And this episode is gonna be a fun one. We're gonna talk about animations and how to do them in Canvas. And this is simply done by just referring always to two steps. The first one is that we draw a frame, then we clear that frame, and then we draw another frame. And that's simply it. So if we started actually by trying to draw a circle that moves across our canvas. So let's try to visualize this. An animation is just a visualization of a change over time. So let's say that I want a circle to move from this side, from the beginning of our canvas horizontally, that goes until the end of our canvas, and then goes into the outer out space of our canvas, and then goes back again from the other side. So we have a start state, we have an end state, and of course between these two states we're going to have some intermediate states. And this is something that's called interpolation. It's just the insertion or the creation of the intermediate states between those two to give us this smooth motion and to trick our eyes into believing that this is actually moving in a good animation way. So yeah, let's start by implementing a function in here, just writing the definition for this function. I'm going to call it draw circle that way, and then I'm gonna call that one to actually be drawn. Okay, so first thing, everything is exactly gonna be the same. We're gonna use everything that we learned in the previous episodes. So the only new method in here is that it's called the clear rect. This clear rect is just a rectangle, draws a rectangle, but instead of a filled or stroke rectangle, it just clears our canvas in order to actually draw a new frame. So as I said, we have two steps. We draw a frame, then we clear it to draw a new frame with a different states or different arguments, for instance, if it's any shape. So okay, so I want to clear all of our canvas, so I'm gonna start at the top left, which is 0 and 0, and for the width and height I'm gonna use our canvas width and our canvas height horizontally and vertically to cover all of our canvas and to clear it. So this is gonna call canvas width and canvas height. We can just use 500 by 500 since that's what we specified in our HTML. So okay, now we cleared our canvas. Let's set a background for this one. So simply I can just say background color documentation. Okay, so I can just now call the fill style to choose a color for the background. I'm just gonna use light gray, and then I'm just gonna fill another rect that goes exactly from the top left to our whole canvas area that way. If we saved, we can see now that this covered all of our canvas. Now let's draw our circle, in which is circle that way. Okay, so let's use begin path, of course, since it's a new shape, and it's gonna have all of these states. So if I didn't use begin path, you're gonna see that it's like now I'm gonna show you, but it's not gonna be an independent shapes. It's gonna be all connected together in a weird way, or just cause this weird mashup. So okay, let's call the arc method. Okay, let's keep it static. I don't want it to move in order to see the difference between both of them, the animation and the static one. So I'm just gonna call it 250 so that it's in the center. I'm gonna go with a radius of 100 and from 0 to 2 pi, in which is a full circle or 360 degrees. And for the anti-clockwise, I'm gonna keep it 2 that way. And then let's choose a fill for that one. I want the fill style to be steel blue. It's a nice color, and I'm gonna fill that one. Okay, let's give it a stroke, for instance. Just say specify a line width. I'm just gonna give it a 10, and then I'm gonna go with a stroke style. We're gonna keep it black, so just say it's for the hex value for it, and then we can call stroke. Okay, so far everything we've actually gone over in the previous episode and everything, except this clear rect, in which is a new method. As I said, we use it to clear, and it's mainly used for animation to clear. And just if we want to do a new frame, we have to clear the previous frame in order to just change frames and see the motion of objects or shapes. So okay, now we need a new method, and we actually going to use it a lot in animation or in games. It's called the request animation frame. This request animation frame, if I called it from the request animation frame, and I just called our function for the callback, and just say it's going to be draw circle. What this request animation frame method does is that it's going to call draw circle repeatedly and rapidly. It's going to keep, it's a way of creating our animation loop. This means that we're going to call this function over and over again. So if this is the first frame that's going to be drawn, it's going to call it again, the second frame, and then the third frame. That's why we clear before a new frame is drawn that way. And so this animation frame gives us an animation loop of a frame rate of 60, which means that it's going to be 60 iterations of this function in a second. That means every frame takes about 60.67 milliseconds. So yeah, it's going to keep calling it repeatedly and rapidly in order to by the way, this is not going to stop. The animation loop won't stop until we actually cancel the animation frame, or we set a boolean, for instance, or just we alter the request animation frame action. So okay, now you can see that this is actually keep drawing again and again and again over the same position. It won't stop. But if I want to see the animation in action, I have to alter one of the arguments for the arc. Let's say that I want this circle to move across or just horizontally across the x-axis. Simply I can just create a new variable that I'm gonna call position x, and I'm gonna make it canvas dot. I want this to start at the center, so it's gonna be exactly the same. Nothing changed until now. And I'm going to introduce a new variable. I'm going to call it speed, which is going to be 5. Now if I increased the position x value by 5 every new frame is drawn, we can see that this actually moves. So let's say now before requesting animation frame, or before a new frame is drawn using this request animation, I'm going to update this position x. So I'm going to say position x plus speed that way, and I'm just going to make an if statement in here for the if this circle goes out, because it's going to increase 5 and 5 and 5, that goes out on the outer side of this canvas. So I can just say if position x is bigger than 1000, which is way after this 500, I want it to come back from the other side, which is simply the negative side. So I can give it minus 500 or just minus 300, for instance, works fine. Now if we refreshed everything, we can see this actually moving, and then it's gonna come back from the other side like that. Okay, this is how this circle is actually keeps drawing. So yeah, if I increase the speed by actually just giving 10, for instance, it's gonna just move faster than before. And the request animation frame is not the only animation function that we can use. We can use the set interval and set timeout. These are outdated functions or methods, but I'm going to show you now how we can use it in order to rotate a circle. For instance, if you want to see the position of x, we can simply just log. You can just say console.log, and I can say position x that way. And I'm just going to go to inspect, and to console we can see all of the positions. Now you can see now if it's bigger than 1000, it's gonna go back to minus 300, which is our if statement in here. And just to keep track of the position, and everything goes that way. So yeah, this is simply everything about animations. Just bear in mind that you actually know how to use the request animation frame, which is simply the animation loop, everything that is different from what we've learned before, and of course the clear rect. Okay, so now let's try to comment all of this. So as I said, this loop is gonna keep iterating or looping until we actually cancel this. We can just create a ball and running, and I can just say true, for instance, or just, yeah, of course, because you know in JavaScript it's dynamically typed, it's not statically typed as in C++, and I got used to C++ a lot, so simply I can just say variable in here and just say running, and I can just say true, for instance. That way, no need to specify a type. This is JavaScript, okay. And simply I can just say I can go while running, for instance, and I can just make a statement that way. So yeah, this is another way of actually stopping the loop, or I can use the cancel animation frame that way with the draw circle. So yep. Okay, let's comment everything out in this one so we can actually go to another example. So if I just set control and comment that one. Okay, so let's say that I want to rotate an image. Let's use the spaceship that we actually draw in the previous episode. So that we actually drew in the previous episode. So I can just go. Okay, let's create an image object in order to draw our image, in which is a spaceship and our assets. So simply I can create an object, an image object, by just calling my image, and I can say new image, same as we did in the previous episode. I think you should check that one if you didn't. And now we're gonna specify our image source that way, and I can just call assets and go to spaceship.png, same as before. Now we have to add an event listener or handler. That means if this image got loaded, we're gonna just perform a function or do an action. So simply I can just say my image, and I can add an event listener that way, and I'm just gonna say load, and I'm just gonna go to animate, which is this function, animate, that way. Okay, so now let's create a new function. I'm gonna call it animate. Now in this animate, I'm gonna use set interval in order to have to choose our own frame rate or our own frames per second, which is the number of loops in a second, or the number of iterations of this animation function in a second. So okay, let's actually try to, since I'm moving, I'm just rotating an image, so that means I'm gonna use an angle. So I'm say let angle be in 0 right now, and then I'm gonna increase the angle so that it loops around the whole 360 times, which is just keeps looping. So okay, I'm gonna use the set interval function, as I said, in order to just use our own frame rate. So simply, just for the sake of change, since we used request animation frame in that one, we're gonna use set interval in this one, even though I don't advise you to use set interval unless you want to choose your own frame rate, or for your own use. So now let's create this function. This is simply just a function. We can just use function keyword instead of that, and now we can choose the frame rate. So if, let's say that I want to choose a frame rate of so I can just say var frames per second. I want to choose 40 frames per second, so I can just say 1000 over 40, so that we have the delay in milliseconds, in which is the one frame time. Okay, so now let's use the save and restore methods in order to see them in action, because we've done an episode about save and restore. So let's try to see them in action. So I'm just going to call context save. Sorry. So I'm saving this current state, in which is initially nothing, just this original state for canvas. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the clear rect in order to clear our canvas before every new frame is drawn, same as before when we did the clear and then we draw on the circle, and then when just the animation loop goes in a new frame, it clears everything that was in the previous frame. So now let's call clear rect, and I want this to go from 0, just top left, to our whole canvas area, same as before. Okay, now let's try to use the translate in order, since as we've gone over transformation, and we knew that the transformation is done to our whole canvas area, not just to a certain shape or object. That means if we want to rotate an object, that means I'm going to rotate our whole canvas. So if I translated this canvas by the width and height of an image in order to actually see it in our canvas, so I'm just going to call translate, and I'm going to call this on my image width and height for my image height, which is simply horizontally and vertically translating our image, our canvas, our whole canvas. So simply now I just can call rotate. Now we know that this rotate takes an angle in radians, so I'm just gonna increase our angle by 5 every time this gets drawn, and I can multiply this by over 180 in order to convert this to degrees that way. Okay, so everything is good so far. Now let's draw our image to actually see it in. I'm gonna call it restore after that one in order to restore our current state, and then draw everything again so we can have this smooth rotation of our image. So okay, so now I'm gonna pass my image object that way, and for the x and y I'm gonna call my image dot width over 2. Now we're gonna use the negative width and height, because our image now is gonna turn around, or just rotate around the center of this image. So it's gonna rotate around the same center. So simply we have to make it negative for that, and then my image, and I can just call the height over 2. So now we can see that our image is rotating that way. I can just scale that one up if I want by calling scale again. We've gone over transformation in the previous episode. You should check that one also. 1.5, and so that it's going up. If I want this to be, now this runs at 40 frames per second, which means that it has this animate function goes 40 times in a second. If I want this to be 60 frames, which is the casual one, or the one that we used in the request animation frame, so that we have this smooth motion that way. Okay, and we can remove this scale thing in order to actually restore. Okay, and now we can see that the save and the restore are actually we used them in a good way, so that we can rotate our image. And simply that's everything you need to know about animation. And maybe we'll go over request animation frame more in upcoming episodes. And yeah, let's say that I want to move that one in order to see how this rotates around the center. So I can just simply say can just translate this. If I said I want to scale this one down to actually see what, or just change the width and height of this in order to see how this rotates around. See, now it's not, because this is the center of it, that's why we made the width and height for the x and y to draw the image are negative, in order so that this image gets drawn around its center. So yeah, we can even increase that one to see that it goes that way. Okay, so yeah, that's everything you need to know, and I'll see you in the next one.